you can see, I'm clearly running out of room, but I know I haven't made a video in a while, so it's time for another one. And I don't necessarily want to do it outside, and I don't have room in here. So I think what I'm going to do is move some of this out, and we'll move this bike over where we can get around it, and I'll show you what's next. Now I know we're kind of jumping ahead here, and that's okay. I said we were going to finish the seat first and then think about bars, but sometimes things just work out the way they do. Quite honestly, I have a lot going on, so we have to do it how we do it. This bar is bent right here, so we need new ones anyways, and these are kind of low but upright bars. And I figure since I'm gonna change them, I may as well get something that has a little more appeal to them. I kind of went around and around with this, you know, I'm kind of a clip-on guy for something like this, but then you have to do something with your risers. You'd end up having to do a lot of extra work to make that look good. Two, you'd have to get shorter cables, and you know, controls are a little different. It's just something for a budget build that I'm not wanting to do. The other option is a nice set of Clubman bars, which I think would look great on here for the money. So what I wound up with is this set of Clubman bars. They're Chinese from Amazon. They're pretty cheap. The one problem is your knurls for the riser clamps are a lot closer together than the risers. Also, there's some, you know, they did a terrible job welding this. But as far as I can tell by eye, this is symmetrical. So it's going to look good. If I really wanted to, I could fill this and refinish it and make it look a lot better, but I don't think I'm going to do all that. So let me start getting all this stuff off of here, all the hand controls, the grips. Then once we start setting this up, I'm going to show you a few other neat features this will have. I'll give you one little hint. We're not going to need these grips anymore. So I'm not going to take any real care to try to get them off without damaging them. Obviously, since I'm in here, it's not a bad idea to clean the clamp up. So these bars are pretty narrow. I think they'll work okay. If we get them positioned just right. I'd like them down like this. They're so narrow that they're hitting the gauges. Now, one thing I could do is cut this across the center and get a piece of 7/8 tube, maybe about 1 inch or so, and bring these knurls out where the clamp is. That would also get me outside of the gauge. I may do that later. I'm going to try to do it the way it is. And if it's a problem, we'll come back to that. One of the biggest problems is sitting the cap on top of the fork tube. I think what I want to do, I do want this to be positioned a little farther down. So I may raise the front end just a little bit. Just kind of lower the forks. I'm not big on choppers. I can't say I've ever raised the front of a bike, but hopefully the payoff is worth it. Let's see if I can bring that down kind of flush with the riser. And honestly, that's not all that different. So hopefully it won't really be noticeable. Usually you'd want to go the other way, but I will say if you're going to do this, do one at a time. That way the other one will hold the bike up for you. Well, that angle feels pretty good. Not bad. we'll probably go with that for now. Like I said, it is a budget build. I'm not dead set on it, but I'm going to go with it. We're going to continue on and put all the controls together and see how it looks. Now this is where it starts to get kind of interesting. Now this is not a big deal. I run these all the time. I love them. So we have some bar end mirrors, and if you ride, in my opinion, these are just the way to go. There's nothing like looking over and just seeing everything instead of your shoulder or your arm. So bar end mirrors are one thing, but one thing I've never seen, bar end turn signals. Now this is the first time I've done anything like this, but to my knowledge, normally you couldn't do bar end turn signals and mirrors together for obvious reasons. They go on the end of the bars, so it's either one or the other. But I'm wondering if I can do both. I have some initial ideas on how I want to do that, so I went ahead and got them, and I feel pretty confident that there's some way I can make this work. Now that does rely heavily on this nut here on the bar end mirror having the same size and pitch as the nut on the turn signal. And if it does, I think we can combine the two so they both work on the same principle, and that is when you tighten them they spread inside the bar. So if I can combine the two, I think I can make them work together. Now, I'm a huge fan of Biltwell Torker grips. I pretty much use those on everything too. I just like the look of them. But to have anything on the end of your bars, they need to be open. And I have used bar end mirrors. I've never used the turn signals. I usually cut them open, but that doesn't look very good. You can tell it's not made to be open, so it looks jagged. So I did find these are kind of knockoffs, and they look good and they kind of match the seat, but they're open on the end. But I think I'm going to get the look that I like personally, and we'll still be able to run our mirrors and turn signals. Obviously we're not going to do this yet. The other thing I got was the tail light. So this will be the tail light strip that I was mentioning in the last video about the bike. So it's all red. The few on the end will also light up amber, so you'll have turn signals. And of course all of this, the turn signals and this light here, I've tested it and it all works and it's pretty bright. So that was the biggest concern. Now how long it works I'm not sure, but you know, that's one of the things with this Chinese stuff, is sometimes it's a coin toss. It may or may not work out of the box. Turn signals also have a white light. I'm not sure I want to use that. I'll go ahead and pre-wire for it. So what I may do, I'd have to come up with a couple of relays for it, is have them where they're on with the lights. The white lights will be on, and when you turn right, say this is the right one, that white light will turn off and then your amber will flash. But I may not use the white lights at all, just so they're turn signals. Like I said, I'll pre-wire for it, and if I want to change it, I'll be able to get in there and change it without taking it all apart. Now my determination to do something is usually pretty high, so if I feel like I can do it, most of the time I get lucky and I can do it. Normally you'd run these mirrors like that. Some people put them where they're low. I like that look personally, so I may do that. And then what I'm hoping to do is have the turn signal right here. But if I set it up like this, obviously that wouldn't work. So I'll probably end up having the mirror low. So let me see what I can come up with to make this work. Whether I use these or the rubber or the rubber from the turn signals, I'm not sure yet. So I'm just going to have to kind of play around here and see what I can make work. So really all I need to do, I need to focus on this little center section here and see if I can get this to fit together. So let's take a turn signal apart. Take the rubber off. Now let's see how this goes. Ideally, I'd want the turn signal to sit against this section here. And it does look like we have a decent amount of thread hanging out without using this. This is obviously a lot longer. So obviously I couldn't use the rubber unless I cut it down, and I might do that. I could also cut these down. Let's see where these end up. So obviously with this together like it is, this nut won't reach the stud, so I can cut these tabs down a little bit and bring it a little closer, or I can cut the rubber, probably cut it in half. I'm going to see how well this fits in the tube. If it's pretty snug, then I think I can afford to cut it in half, and it'll be close enough that any compression will tighten that up pretty good. So here's what I decided on. Like I said, if this doesn't work, we haven't lost anything, because if the rubber doesn't work, then I can't use them anyway, so I'm not afraid to cut them in half. So let me just cut one in half. I don't have anything decent to do this other than a razor knife. So now I've got two halves here that are pretty close to identical. So I think what I can do is thread one of these through. And I still have enough thread there, and then I can thread this nut on. So what we'll do is, obviously, you know, so this will be inside the bar, and we'll use the turn signal to compress that. And I'm thinking, yeah, so if I hold the rubber, it's able to compress, and I think that'll grab hold of the inside of the handlebar tight enough to make this work. Kind of put this back together, and then I'll see if I can test fit it on the bike. That's loose enough to work. Let's see if we can test fit it on the bike. Now, whatever we come up with, one thing I'm going to have to do is try to fish these wires through the bars. Obviously, I'll cover them up with something, so they're not going to go in there right now. But what I'm going to do, we're just kind of test fitting everything, so I'm just going to stuff them in there the best I can, and then when we know what we want, I'll drill into the bottom of the bar here on each side to run the wires down. So this rubber actually fits pretty snug inside the handlebar. So as long as I can get it in there, it's probably going to be how we do it. So I've got to come up with something to get that in there, but I think that, you know, so we tighten it with the turn signal itself. And I think that's pretty secure, even with it half hanging out. Alright, I didn't want to bore you guys with putting all the hand controls and the levers and whatnot on. If you want to know how to do that, there's tons of videos out there. So I got everything together, got the grips on, and what I've done is under each side, right in this corner here, I drilled a hole, for the harness for the turn signal to go through. And I ran a piece of wire through there that I can fish this through with. So I'm going to do that. It's going to be a little tight, but I think we can make it work. And then I'm going to tighten this down. That seems pretty solid. Let me put the mirror on and see what it looks like. That seems pretty solid. I mean, I got a bar and mirror and a turn signal. I guess you can do it. Let me get the other side together and get everything adjusted, and we'll pull the bike out and see what it looks like. Alright, so I did the mirrors a little different. I turned them up. I like the look of them hanging down or straight out better, but when I sat on the bike, my arms are right in the way of the mirrors. I couldn't see them, but I think that looks a lot better than it did with the Clubmans. And those grips match the seat, you know, the pattern and the color pretty well. So as you can see with these mirrors, let me hop on it. These mirrors, you can see everything. They're way better than the traditional mirrors. So when you're on the bike with these mirrors on it, I love them. You just look over, you can see everything. You're not looking at yourself, your armpit, your fat ass. You're not looking at any of that. So sitting on the bike, put, you know, one foot on the peg, and I gotta say the placement of these, it stretches me out a little more. It's pretty comfortable. So although they do look kind of funny, anything with risers and regular handlebars on one of these bikes looks kind of funny, unless it's a scrambler, in my opinion. But who says we got to do things the way everyone else does them? This is still cool enough, I think, and everything I did here is well within the budget, and possibly the first ever bar and turn signals with bar and mirrors. I'm sure somebody's done it. I mean, why not? But that turned out pretty good and solid, you know. I mean, they're solid. They're not going to go anywhere. So I like them. So the next video of this bike, I'm pretty sure we're going to finish the seat. Don't hold me to it. Still got to find a tank, and I have something in mind for that when I do get one, but so far I haven't found one that I'm willing to spend the money on. Like I said, they seem to be kind of expensive for this bike. I'm not sure why. I'm going to keep looking for one that I want to spend the money on, and then we'll start working on that, and this thing will be real close. So this I think it turned out pretty cool looking, especially with the paint scheme that I want to do with the tank. I think it would look really cool. Obviously I'm not going to use that muffler either. We'll come up with something. I don't like that. Alright, I'm going to call it there. Till next